Today I'm going to show you how to install your windows. Every solid van build needs at least one window to provide good cross ventilation, but also some amazing bloody views. Now today we've got the Dometic S4. This is a 900 by 550 mil window, and we're going to install it onto this panel here. Now what I've already done is created a bit of a wooden frame. This actually goes on the interior of the door, and it's to allow this internal part to clamp down. Most of these windows aren't designed to go onto thin sheet metal, so they're designed to go into like caravan walls where you've already got thickness from the insulation. So it's really important that you do pad them out with something solid, and that's going to A, keep your seals intact because there's going to be less movement, B, it's just going to make for a better experience. Now with the Dometic, they open pretty wide. They've got locking from the inside, but they've also got this interior finish as well that has a slide out blind and a fly screen as well. So you can get awesome ventilation, and that's why we didn't go with the slide open windows. Despite being glass and a lot nicer looking, they're a little bit more discreet. None of them really have fly screens. They don't have built-in blackouts, which means you've got to build it all, and we all know how much of a nightmare it is building a solid insulated blackout curtain. It either costs an arm and a leg, or it's very, very difficult to build, very labor intensive, and you need some solid skills at a sewing machine. To cut this hole out, I'm going to use a jigsaw and a drill. The drill is just to have 2 starter holes to allow my blade to get into the metal. I never recommend using an angle grinder on your van, especially if you have a Mercedes. The reason is angle grinders provide a massive rust risk. The embers or the dust that comes off them is very, very hot, and it can easily ruin your paint job. The other thing is that dust is almost impossible to clean entirely. There's always going to be some sort of remnant, and if they settle on your paint, especially in little ledges like this, you're going to get rust. With a jigsaw, the waste that comes off that, it's a lot coarser, it's a lot thicker, and it doesn't tend to hang around. It sort of just falls onto the ground. Plus, with a jigsaw, you're going to get a much neater cut. Just use a jigsaw, it's a lot easier. Anyway, let's get this installed. First thing you want to do is mark out your window. You want to get it nice and level. With the van, it is difficult. You can't use a level. Squares are a little bit challenging as well because the surface of the door is curved, so you don't want to get a distortion. The easiest thing on this door, there's really only one line to go off that is nice and straight, and that's this one here where the door connects. So that's where I'm going to be taking all my markings off, and then we'll use a square from there. First off, easiest thing to do, so you need to get the jigsaw blade into the metal. So start off with your drill. You want to drill 2 corners on opposite sides. That's enough because then you can go up and to the side, and then vice versa. Cut it out, meet at the other 2 corners that you haven't drilled out. Alright, that should be pretty much ready to start the cuts. I can tell you now, these doors cost a few $1,000s to replace, so it's best to just not have to need to replace it. So always make sure you've got the perfect size cut out. I love it when a plan comes together. So when you get about roughly halfway through your cut, it's a good idea. This bit's going to start getting pretty floppy and it can affect your cut, but also can damage the edges. So what I find, also when you finish your cut, if you don't have this taped, it'll drop. So what I find, get some good quality cloth tape. Don't use duct tape or masking tape. It's just not strong enough. And just put a couple across here, and that's going to really help hold it in when you finish your cut. But it's also going to help keep this nice and steady whilst you cut, rather than flapping around all over the place. So we're going to just cut through here as normal with the cut, with the jigsaw. But then once we've got this panel out, I'll come back in with the angle grinder and just finish it up, because we want the wood to be sitting right up against the same sheet metal, not against this support beam, just because that's going to create it really unevenly. I reckon one more here, and then Bob's your auntie. So that's now nowhere near as wobbly. Now that's what I call a hole. If there's one thing that is scarier than cutting a massive hole in the side of your van, it's that moment of truth when you test it out to see if the hole that you've just cut is the right size. Too small we can work with, too big we're up the creek without a paddle. Moment of truth. Oh, beautiful. Have a look at that. It's a nice looking window. Alrighty guys, if you're gonna do a job, do it properly. You're only doing it once. Always file your cuts. File, spray it with primer and then epoxy. You do not want any bare metal whatsoever anywhere in your van. Bare metal equals rust. Rust equals not very fun holidays and a lot of money later down the track. It's not hard, just give your cuts. Now when it comes to sealing, what you want to do is make sure you seal the outside as best you can. Now with the Dometic S4s, they do have a rubber gasket around the very outer side, but that's by no means a seal. That's more or less going to help you out. It's going to protect the metal, but do not rely on that as a seal. Now fortunately there's about a 18 to or maybe 15 to 20 mil gap between the seal and the edge of the window. That's what you want to seal. Fill it up. You can't use, well you can use too much glue, but I'm using Sikaflex 291, so this is the marine glue. I've found with all my van builds this stuff's pretty good. It holds up to the sun really well, the rain, and it seals beautifully. Now I'm going to pay special attention to the top and the sides, because I know from experience, well the top is a no-brainer, but the sides in particular, because the door is curved, you want to have extra protection there. Oh God, and if you can get any extra protection against mosquitoes, that's awesome, because I'm getting eaten alive. So you want a nice thick layer, very, very thick layer. Doesn't have to be too even, just get it nice and in the corner, and that way when you put it on, it should naturally spread. And what we're aiming for is having enough thickness there so that when I do put the window in, it'll come into any gaps around the edge that I've got in my cutout. That's the idea. Now what you want to do is also put extra around the corners as well. Look at that. That is beautiful. Look how clear it is. And you've gone and put finger marks on my new window.
Oh, how do I do it? Oh, those things.
That's nice. I like that. So, with the window, you've got to build a sort of like a spacer out of timber, because it's built for a 34mm wall cavity. And considering this is recessed and we're likely going to have some plywood, there goes my shield, some plywood over here, you want the timber sitting flat. One thing we did wrong in the last van was we didn't bother cutting these little bits off, and it's such a simple job, but it means that the face or the interior part of the window, the blind and the fly screen, will sit really unevenly, and it can just affect how this outer bit sits as well when it's all glued. For the sake of the camera and YouTube, let's say I'm a perfectionist. This is why I like doing things myself. Mostly because if I stuff something up, I've got no one to be ticked off to other than myself. I stuffed it up. No one else to blame. If someone else does it, if someone else stuffs up, it's their fault. Should have done it myself. You can't get good help these days.